Hey everyone, and welcome back. My name is Dr. Shayna Powell, naturopathic doctor and owner of West Elks Wellness. This week we're going to talk about pain and suffering, maybe a little grief and sorrow, and is it necessary? We're going to leave this conversation a little more open-ended, and I've invited a good friend of mine from school, Dr. Victoria Gowdy, and I invited her because she thinks about these things in a little bit of a different way than I do, and I wanted to have back and forth conversation so that we can kind of do a little discovery as we go along the way. Dr. Victoria, will you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, Shayna, for having me. I'm Dr. Victoria. I'm a naturopathic physician here in Ohio. I have an online practice, and my focus is really soul healing. How do we heal? How do we understand what our soul is communicating to us through our symptoms and suffering so that if we choose and if we want, we can choose to shift and change and come into alignment. And so we can use that suffering as a tool to find to ourselves, as a tool to come back home. And so that's a large part. And that's really the focus of my practice is teaching people how to get in contact with that knower and healer inside and get into alignment so the healing happens on its own.
Yeah, I really love that. And one of the things I see, especially with patients that come to me, they've had a stack of tests like this. They've been on every diet you can possibly imagine, maybe on a few still restricted diets because, their food allergy test came back with 50 things. And they're not really getting better. They're on a ton of supplements. All the physical realm things have been addressed, maybe even some of the emotional realm things, but very few practitioners actually touch on the soul. And I spoke about this with another colleague of ours, Ryan Phillips, who, when we try to bring these conversations up, we live in such a secular society that it's like, whatever someone wants to do is fine. It's like, no, we need to have a little more conversation around that so that we can understand what exactly are we aiming towards? What the hell is even a soul?
Yeah, that is it our job to just do what the patient or client wants, or is it our job to hold a light to the truth so that the people that are coming to us for healing can get in true touch with their own light and truth?
Yeah, truly,
Um,
actually, like the deep healing, right? Like that's the deep
yeah,
work that we're talking about here.
yeah, and what I see in practice, and I'm sure you see this as well, when we just focus on the physical level. I like to do this little hand analogy. I got hand on the bottom, hand on the top. If you put them together, then your palms are touching. But the bottom hand represents the deeper realms, the energetic, the mental, emotional realms. And the top hand represents the physical realm.
Mm.
And well, most of us realize we want something different on the physical realm. This isn't working. I want this, something, I want something different, right? We see the effect, the negative effect, the thing we want to change in the physical realm.
Mhm.
And so we can see how it might be tempting to then make the change in the physical realm, right? Changing our diet, making us move more, maybe even meditating, right? Taking the right supplements, doing the things on the physical level.
Mhm.
And well, in my experience, that can work for a period of time. It's
True.
kind of like strong arming our system. It can work for a period of time. But if the bottom, mental, emotional, deeper level is not mirroring that top level, the top level will always mirror that deeper level. So you can
Mm.
force the physical, but it'll always go back to match the mental, emotional. So what I
Right.
teach my clients is let's enact change where it matters.
Mm.
Let's go to that deep mental, emotional level and start working there because then the physical automatically follows. We each know how to take care of ourselves, how to give our body exactly what it wants and needs in order to heal. Most of us have just learned to tune those signals out.
Right.
And so when we come into alignment in that deeper mental emotional level, the doing, the physical naturally follows. And we're able to give our body exactly what it needs and wants at any given point in order for it to heal. This is how, what I talk about coming into alignment, we automatically heal.
Mm. Right. It's like, I've had a patient share with me that, she left a really toxic marriage, and shortly after leaving that marriage, the weight that she had been trying to lose for like a decade just like came off like that, because it had nothing to do with her blood sugar or her weight or like actually the physical things that she was doing. It was the fact that she was in a long-term loveless relationship that wasn't serving her, and it's hard to make those big changes. Sometimes we
Yeah.
think about like, oh, you need to quit your job, you need to move to a new place, you need to find a spiritual path. Like, these are big things for people to do and big things to ask. Much easier to take a pill, right? Pill is not
So
solving
we
the
think.
problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, and what I would say to that is that her leaving her husband didn't solve the problem either, right? The
Mm.
change within her first that led to her leaving her husband is also the change that led to her losing the weight and her blood sugar normalizing and her
Right,
system coming back to a system center, alignment,
right,
coherence.
right. Interesting. So this kind of reminds me of the Joe Dispenza quote, and like a lot of people have quotes like this. It's like, where we place our thoughts, our energy goes. And so she was thinking like, I just want to lose this weight, I want to lose this weight, I want to lose this weight. She was focusing on this thing that was physical, tangible, rather than changing her, like, I have to make this like mental leap to change
Yeah, and then
this suffering that I'm having.
yeah, yeah. And
Mm.
and speaking of suffering, right? That's typically how we use it in this realm. Right? Her being in the marriage, her wanting so desperately to lose the weight, her being miserable in the marriage, those are what she designed in order to nudge herself to change directions, to
Mhm.
change alignment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It brings the question to, is the suffering necessary? No, I don't think so. Right? We people spontaneously have spiritual awakenings here, spontaneously heal, right? The suffering is not always necessary,
True.
but we live in a tapas loka realm. In Sanskrit meaning the realm of transformational heat.
Transformational heat. Okay.
The realm of transformational heat. And so this is what we often see us doing here is using heat to transform ourselves.
Pressure, if you will, of the
Pressure,
suffering.
suffering, yes, yes, yes. We use that in order to guide ourselves more home. Is it
Mhm.
necessary? No, absolutely
Mhm.
not. But do a lot of us use it in this realm to help us awaken? Absolutely. And
Right,
we
like
can
this.
then use it as an opportunity instead of looking at our suffering a thing from running from or dis-ease a thing we run from. Instead, we can lean in and say, okay, what is the gift here?
Right,
For what reason did I design this in my life that's causing suffering in my life? Because we use that suffering to get our attention.
right. Have it scream
And then
loud
we can,
enough.
yes, yes. Exactly. Right, we talk about in med school, right, the common I've heard it several times, right? If we're out of alignment with our soul or how we talk about it, we start getting symptoms, it's like a little tap on the shoulder,
Mm.
right? And then if we're not listening, it turns to a nudge, and then to a little more aggressive shove, and then a shake, and then you're getting clocked across the face
And push down the stairs all at the same
and
time.
pushed down the stairs, right? At the same time, while you're getting run
Right.
over by a car, right? This is how we get our attention.
Mhm. Totally. I'd like to read a little bit of something from the Jungian Center. I really like etymologies of words, and I feel like this is an appropriate time to talk about the etymology of suffering. So it comes from Latin, sub and for fere, which there's a couple meanings that we can look at, but I like the psychological sense one a little bit more. And it means when you join these two words together, to take upon oneself or to take upon ourselves. So that's like we can choose to have a spontaneous spiritual awakening, or we can choose to be in a loveless marriage for 10 years or work for the IRS for 20 years, even though we hate our job. But now we got cancer, so it's fine. I can quit now. I just needed that big push down the stairs. even though you knew the whole time
Right,
you
and
did
most
not
of
meet
us
your
who
job.
don't get to that and most of us don't get to that can't we having cancer, "Oh, I'll just quit my job now, finally, I'm so glad I got cancer," right? It's usually such a tumultuous time for us, right? We're holding on. The reason where we create this tapas loka, the realm of transformational heat, is because it gets our attention.
Right. Totally. And this is so interesting. I'm not sure if any of your patient base comes to you on psych meds, and I'm not against psych meds, and there's a time and a place, so no judgment. This is just musing that I've had. I'm wondering about the use, especially in the United States, because we use more psychiatric medications than any other country. And it feels like every other person I know is on at least an antidepressant, if not multiple psych meds. Um, that to kind of like dull the sense of suffering instead of making the change or shifting our prerogative on something, we're just going to dull it. It's fine. And
Yeah,
at some
it's just
point, the medication or the supplement or whatever the thing is that
no
we're
longer
using to
works.
kind of dull stops working. Maybe we just need an increase in dose. Maybe we just need a kick in the pants, right? It's like it dulls that, what you're calling it, the tapas locus, the realm of transformational heat. We're denying ourselves almost of this transformation then.
Yeah. Yeah,
Whoa.
right. The psych meds are a form of suppression, right? We can also use natural medicine as a form of suppression, right? If we're just taking a turmeric for an anti-inflammatory, right? Why do you have so much inflammation? What is your body
Right,
trying to shift? Right? What are you trying to get your attention to shift?
right.
Right? And I agree. When we suppress the vital force with anything, a pharmaceutical, a natural substance, TV, alcohol, weed, shopping, whatever it is, we're denying our soul the evolution it came here for.
Mhm. Yep.
Said another way, we're denying ourselves the awakening, the seeing through of the veils to our truth.
Seeing through the veils. Exactly. Which, you know, just what was I was studying in a Baha'i group not too long ago, and we were talking about faith. And, that I feel like life gives us a series of tests, and can we remain faithful, whatever that looks like in whatever flavor for you, through those different trials and tribulations? Can we still see the silver lining, the light at the end of the tunnel? Or do
Yeah.
we lose our faith, which happens to a lot of people, especially younger people I've noticed. They kind of feel a little disillusioned. And that's those lifting of the veils. It's like, okay, can I see this, divorce or friend's death or even the death of a pet, right? Can I see this as like I allowed this creature, this pet to transform my life and, be my best friend while they were here on this realm? And or am I going to just like drink and drink and drink to cope with the fact I lost my, dog of, 15 years or whatever, right? Like people have some interesting like coping mechanisms to offset death. And I think part of the reason too is because we don't talk about death in like Western culture the same way that they do in Eastern culture. It's like this taboo thing. They don't talk about sex in Eastern culture. We don't really talk about sex either, but we also don't talk about death. So with both of these like taboo subjects that are like
I
so
once
critical to life.
I once heard someone refer to the idea that we have lost someone when they die
Mm,
to a they end up calling it sillily, hear me out, a stupid misconception.
okay.
Because really, they're only not here in this human form or
Yeah,
animal form.
totally.
We still have access to them as long as we can shift our frequency to be aware of those higher frequencies. If
Mm,
we're stuck in, oh, poor me, lower frequencies, we can't be in those higher frequencies to communicate with spirit, with the other side.
right,
We all hold the ability to never lose a loved one because we would only lose them in the physical form.
right. Right. I don't know if
And
you've had this happen to you, but I've had this happen where people have passed from this physical plane and somehow I feel closer to them. Like it's such a
yeah.
weird thing.
Mm,
Maybe
mm,
distance they lived across the country, but then they died.
mhm.
Physically they died, not spiritually because they're still here. And now we're getting into some like different beliefs about things, but I believe that there are different realms that we don't see because our eyes are just not that good, unfortunately, for
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah, our eyes don't perceive those other realms, right? Other sensory things perceive those when we start allowing ourselves to
Exactly.
perceive
If
those
we
things.
allow, that's the
We've tuned them out. We learned to tune them out through life, right?
definitely.
Yeah.
I'm a I love poetry because I feel like it conveys things in a way that is sometimes better than just like a regular sentence. And I'm reading a quick sentence from The Purpose of Emotion from Rumi's Book of Love,
Mm.
and I'll just read the sentence. This is the purpose of emotion: to let a streaming beauty flow through you. It's like that sorrow of quote unquote losing your grandma or losing your husband to cancer or whatever it might be. Can we allow that sorrow to transform us and actually bring us so much joy, because now we remember all the amazing memories we had with that person or that creature, or the time of our life, if maybe high school was the time of your life because you were the quarterback on the varsity team or whatever it may be, right? Can we allow and relish those sensations, or are we just going to,
Tapas
poor me, I'm
locus.
not in high school anymore, I'm not on top of the world.
Yeah, tapas locus, right? Are we going to allow that to transform us? And a quick note to what you had just said, how feeling closer to a relative or a friend or someone that's
Mm,
passed, this is not uncommon.
yeah.
Because often in this human realm, in this messiness where we're here to see if we can see through these veils, some of us forget who we are, what we're doing here. And so we can have a bit of an energetic frequency difference with loved ones and relatives. And
Mm,
it's not until they actually pass and connect to their truth, to their highest self, or in their truth, that we are actually more able to communicate with them. We're closer to them because we're closer in frequency. I'll say it that way. I don't know if that's exactly capturing what I'm trying to say, but
there's no boundaries. Like that's the in my understanding of how the soul or the spirit
yeah,
of the human entity is, it's we're bound by this physical form. That's what makes us finite, is this physical form. But at the moment that our physical form ceases to live, our soul is now free. It's
yeah.
intangible, yes.
Well,
However,
that's
it's
the whole
free.
point, Shana, is can we get free here in the human form?
Yeah.
That's what we're doing
Mm,
here. That's what I'm doing
mm,
here.
mm,
Right? And something, if I may share something, the whole veil thing um, has been recently reintroduced to myself, and I'm remembering around these veils have been opening. And
mm.
may I share that?
Please.
And so, how the story goes in Eastern philosophy is that Shakti is the primordial energy. We could call Shakti source, all that is energy, God, if we don't have too much dogma wrapped up in with religion with that word, right? Shakti, all that is. And the story goes, Shakti wondered what it would be like to not be Shakti.
Hmm.
And in that very wondering, a reality was created and a veil was put it down. The first veil, Anava Mala. And that first veil, right? Because Shakti just wondered, can I experience not Shakti? And Shakti is all that is, right? How we frame it, right? Love, peace, joy, all that is
Mhm.
Shakti. So Shakti said, we said, because we're all Shakti, what is it like to not be Shakti? And so we created a reality with a veil. The first veil is Anavamala. And that veil veiled us from our divinity, from our truth,
Right.
from Shakti.
Right.
So let me finish the story. First veil, we are not part of divinity, right? We actually saw through that. So we created a second veil. Second veil is that we are all separated. We're all separate. So now
Oof.
we're not divine. Not only are we not divine, now we're separate, right? And we actually saw through those veils. And so then we created another veil. And this is the reality we're all currently living in as humans. The third veil is the karmic mala, and it amplifies the other mullahs. Because every time we go out to try to prove our worth, it sends
Hmm.
out ripples. And now those ripples affect the world and they come back to us. And now it comes back to us, and this is when, and what I call our turning point. This is our point of opportunity in our healing.
Mm.
These karmic ripples come back to us, right? And I'll use myself. I picked up the example that for when when I was a little girl, I'm not good enough and I'm gonna be left alone,
Yeah.
right? Guess
Hmm.
what happened in my first serious relationship? I was cheated on.
Mm.
He lost his virginity to my best friend.
Oh, right. Right.
Right?
And that
We create
proves
our
it to
veils
yourself, though.
with it, right? And I could have taken that. The same thing with our symptoms. We can take that, and I'm sure I did at that time, as an opportunity to bolster our limiting belief, right? To prove, see, life isn't fair. I am a victim. I will always be left alone and get the short end of the stick,
Mm.
right? Or we can take it as an opportunity to say, holy shit, I sent those ripples out, which means I believe this limiting belief. Now it's coming
Mhm.
back as an opportunity to say, are you sure? Are you sure you want to continue to hold on to this limiting belief, aka suffering? The suffering says, are you sure you want to hold on to the limiting belief? Or are you ready to let it go and come more home?
Oof.
Right? And we can see from the veils, right? Anavamoli, mulla, that we're no longer divine,
Right.
right? How, right? And all the flavors of I'm not good enough, I'm a piece of shit, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, right? I'm no longer divine. We all
Right,
carry
right, right.
this.
Right.
Because this is part of what we're doing here, exploring in the human experience.
Mm.
Second
Mhm.
mulla is this mulla of separation. Now it's the flavors of I'm alone.
Right.
This is also what construed time in our dimension,
Mm.
in reality, or created time, I will say.
Time and
Right? And
alone.
now what we're doing here is seeing, can we see through the mullahs? That's what we're doing here. That's what we're exploring. That's what we're playing with. All of us as Shakti. Can we see through the mullahs? When we set up this advanced, super advanced course, right, with taking all of our, I call it our own special flavor of ice cream. It's our own special flavor of trauma, basically. Like we set our
Yeah.
life up like to be the most traumatic for what we're here to work on.
Uh-huh.
Right, we set up this challenge for ourselves to then say, can we see through the mullahs? And something that I've been remembering recently is, if we can't, who fucking cares? Excuse my language, sorry. Who
Right.
cares?
Right. No one is gonna come to save you. You have like, this is our individual work to do to come back to
And
realize that we
and
are
if
of
we don't
divine.
awaken in this life, who cares?
Right?
If we don't see them through the mullahs in this life, who cares? Maybe we'll come back for another life. Maybe we'll go to a different planetary system. Maybe we'll, right? Who cares? And I say this and I emphasize this because in my own journey, got so wrapped up in caring.
Totally. I got to evolve. I gotta be on my spiritual journey. I'm so spiritual. I'm gonna always carry
What
my spiritual
what
things
should
and
I be doing? What am I supposed to be
right.
doing here? What's my purpose? What am I, right? And then every moment of every day is you're walking on eggshells because there's something you should be doing.
Yeah, taking it too seriously instead of
Yeah.
with my friend likes to say, we get to do two things. We either get to laugh or we cry. And, if we take it a little less
Let's
seriously and
do
we just
both.
laugh like about the circumstance and be like, huh, isn't this interesting that I think I should be doing something, but why am I not
Yeah.
enjoying the fact I'm sitting in the grass with the sun on my face?
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Right. If we're here just exploring to see through these mullahs,
Mm.
is it not what we're doing here just to create joy? Just to play? to honor our own individual likes and dislikes, not to form them into a should like or shouldn't like because other people like this or these type of people like that, or just honoring what you love, what you like, what fills you with joy, what fills you with light, right?
Mm,
Because when we do that, I always talk about in my group course, uh, that's mainly how I see clients is in a group course, is frequency first. Energy
mm,
is everything. Right? And now, if energy is everything, and I am simply an energetic beacon, right? I'm just simply sending out signals, and I'm over here, oh, fuck, I'm so stressed. What should I be doing? What's my purpose? I gotta do this, right? Like, I'm probably gonna have things land on my plate that I didn't expect, so I'm overwhelmed and there's too much to do, right? I'm going to attract because I am an energetic beacon what my beliefs are. So if I'm sitting here, I
mm.
should have to have blah, blah, blah. That's the reality I'm going to see and create.
Totally.
But think about
Totally.
if our beacon is simply a joy beacon that is having fun and is excited to be here on earth and explore and play, not because there's a have to, should do, achieve, but just because it's fun.
It is fun.
And we have likes and dislikes, and being here on earth is so different than being in our soul form. And then we just get to play and explore what do we create and what do we attract when we're that energy.
I mean, that's the flow state, the elusive flow state, right? And I've definitely seen this in my own, like, using my practice as an example. The more I'm like, oh, I need phone calls, I need more patience. You know how many more patients I get? I get less and less and less,
Lack,
in fact.
if I have someone leave. Yeah.
Right, and it's like, if I just let it go and I'm just like, "Okay, that person canceled, then 3 more schedule," and it's just like this weird thing. If I just that's the lean back mentality I kinda try and take with my patients too. It's like, we need to lean back. We are spending so much time micromanaging the body with all your supplements and all your tests and all these things that we forgot that if we just lean back a little bit, the universe will provide for us. But we need to lean back. We gotta have a little bit of, like, jubilantness through our chronic illness. I don't know if you dealt with any chronic illness, but I personally have, and, like,
Oh, yeah.
looking back, I'm like, "Dang, God, some of that was pretty freaking funny." You know what I mean? Just, like, the behaviors I had, taking the medications, the side effects, me researching so aggressively, like, "Oh, this medication is probably doing this thing." It's like, I look back now and I'm like, "God, you were just such a funny person to be so fixated on this thing, and you needed to have a test to prove that you didn't have this thing anymore, and then the symptoms were just gone. Huh, weird."
Yeah. Yeah.
We grip, we
Right,
grip, we
and
grip,
it's
we
so
grip.
crazy how we set this reality up for ourselves, right? Because hearing you say that up until the age of between 7 or 9, right, our
Yeah,
brains are in delta and theta waves, and so they're just purely in hypnic state. And so we
okay.
not only come to Earth with these veils, but then
Mm.
we lock in to our neural pathways, the messed upness. Excuse me, I'm really trying to watch my language as I'm on a podcast. It programs our neural pathways to that misalignment, to that messed upness. And so then it makes it even more challenging for us to come home.
Oh, totally, we get in our own way. Like, if we just stopped trying to control and manage and hold on to for dear life and just allow. Like, it's like that tension. I think Alan Watts says something to this effect. The more you try to, like, and I do it. I've got the line here from, like, trying to think about and, like, consider all the things. And the more you try and grip and hold on, what happens in your body? You tense, you tense, you tense, you tense. It's like, are you holding it together or not? Because actually you're cutting
And
off blood flow.
what is the energetic reality you're creating more and more of? Right? I'm scared, I'm not okay, I'm
Resistance. Yeah.
resistance, right?
Yeah, I know I've heard you use, like, the river analogy and, like, where are the rocks in the river, and are you able to, like, amble through with your feet pointed down easily, or are you, like, getting all stuck up, up on these rocks and you're trying to go up the frickin' waterfall now, or what?
That reminds me of what you were just saying about letting go. Right?
Exactly.
What I've learned in my journey is I bought into like I grew up in America and I bought into the whole like type A, like I gotta just be the best to achieve, right?
Mhm.
Go, right? And it's this very mental thing, physical thing up here. And it's like do more, figure it out more, think about it more, right? It's actually quite the opposite of effective in what we're trying to
Yeah.
achieve. This
We're
idea
human
of
beings,
surrendering, of
not
letting
human
go, of
doers.
leaning into,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, is how our healing comes about.
Mhm.
It's the total surrender, it's the total letting go that we actually come back to our truth.
And it's so interesting, isn't it, to, like, be told to just be your authentic self, but then everywhere we look, and I said like 3 days ago, I was like, marketing should be illegal because the way that marketing is done, it really affects our psyche. And like, even a person that's like really solid in who they are, you spend enough time listening to the radio or watching TV or even reading modern books, and you start to get that conditioning of like, oh, I should be this way. And it's not just women with their image, men also get it too. Kids also get it too. Like, all
Mm.
forms of humans get these like shoulda, couldas, wouldas, and like imprints onto them. And I don't think the marketing is helping much because it conditions us that we need to be, quote unquote, a certain way.
Hmm. Yeah,
You have
I
a good.
it's such a love-hate relationship with marketing, right? Like both of us being business owners, right? Marketing is something that after I graduated, I was like, oh, huh? And then
Oh,
I
I'm a
was like,
doctor. I
okay,
need to do
marketing
this.
is convincing people to do what they want to do to help themselves, but then some marketing's not that.
Right.
Um, and
How do
it's
those
here
people
you
swing?
say
That's
that.
always my question because I don't wanna, like, take advantage of someone or say that I could help them and I can't. Like, I genuinely want to help people. And so how do I convey that in my marketing? And I actually had a patient tell me, she's like, "You are who you say you are. Like, the way you show up on social media and online is how you are in real life." Like, those 2 things being aligned, people are a lot more drawn to people that behave with words and actions together. I'm like, "Hmm, okay. That's fair." Patients are
Right?
smart. Like, I don't know about you, but I learned a lot from my patients.
Energetically in alignment. Oh my gosh. Yeah, right? Like we're here helping helping our clients, our patients, and like I tell my clients and patients all the time, like thank you so much how they've helped me evolve, where they've helped me see. I don't know if you've seen in your practice, it's like I can help my clients and patients get basically as far as I've gotten in my own evolution. And then there
Totally.
starts being this like tightening here. I see where they're sort of not continuing to flow forward. And
Yeah.
it's my signal always to say, okay, where am I guiding myself home more here?
Mhm. Yep.
Where do
How
I have
can
an
I.
opportunity to come more in alignment myself?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you familiar with Kahlil Gibran at all?
It sounds familiar, but
He
nothing's
wrote The
consciously popping up right
Prophet.
now.
He was a Lebanese poet. And he wrote The Prophet back in like the 1920s. It's been translated into like 20 language or something ridiculous. But he has a little snip. It's not exactly like, rhyming poetry, but it's like little snips on like important pieces, important things about being human. And this
Love
chapter, it's like a page and a half usually, these little snips. It says, "Then the woman said, 'Speak to us of joy and sorrow.' And he answered, 'Your joy is your sorrow unmasked.' So behind your sorrow is actually joy." And I find that to be so interesting. And then he goes on to say, "The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy that you can contain." And this reminds me of that whole Japanese concept, igachi. I'm saying it wrong. It starts with an I, where like the pottery breaks, and what do? They fill it with gold. It's like where we
yeah.
break, and we can see the light through, and then we can help not only ourselves more, but others as well. And it's that positive frequency ripple effect, as opposed to the shorter sighted, "I'm not good enough," which I feel like is got to be the most common human like deep wound that we have, because I hear so many people talk about it. Dr. Phil was talking about it. Gabor Mate talks about it in his trauma books. So
We all
interesting.
have those mullahs, right? We all have those
Right.
veils. We all have some flavor at some point of another of of I'm not good enough and I'm alone. Right? What
Yeah.
I always talk about is our superpower is on the other side of our super pain. That's what that poem reminds me of. And
Totally.
which is like, I think that says so much in that phrase, right? Your superpower is on the other side of your super pain.
Right.
That when we lean into our sorrow, when we lean into our suffering, we make our way through it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's going through the mountain. Emotion simply means energy and motion. We're letting the energy move through us. It's no longer getting stuck in us. When we resist or suppress feeling the emotions, ironically, we leave them stuck in us.
Right.
And they disturb then our energetic flow and then eventually disrupt our physiology and cause symptoms. And then
Mm.
depending on what the emotion is or energy is, it'll locate in different areas of our body depending on different frequencies, aka anger, liver.
Right. Worry, stomach, fear, kidneys. Right,
Exactly.
totally.
Exactly.
Like, there's all these emotional connections, and I feel like the more traditional medicines like Unani, Chinese medicine, and Ayurveda have a better grip on these. They're truly holistic, and I feel like that word has been so bastardized, not only by our profession, but it as a word that gets thrown around as a marketing term. It's like, "Oh, I'm a holistic person." It's like, what does that even mean? Again, let's break that word down, and it's talking about the various aspects of what it means to be a human, and that's not just your physical symptoms. And this is, people with dealing with cancer and other oncological diagnoses and autoimmune. There is almost always, dare I say always, an emotional spiritual undertone that has not been dealt with, and now you get to. Yeah.
The physical will always follow the mental emotional. So if something's
Mm.
out of alignment in the mental emotional level, we see it in the physical. The physical just doesn't come out of alignment if the mental emotional deeper energetic levels are. Even when we think about accidents, like, right? Don't take your power away. You created that.
Right. Well,
Right? And when we
this
talk
is
about suffering and our pain and leaning into it, I want to bring up a really important part here is that yes, leaning into our suffering is important. That's how we find our gift, is by
Mhm.
leaning into the suffering, leaning into the super pain. And right, and something that's really important here that when I originally started in practice, I wasn't as aware of,
Mm.
is that when we lean into the suffering and pain, it is important to allow ourselves to go all into it, fully experience it. The way I talk about it is like fully bring it up. The way a mentor of mine referred to it is like burning in it, right? You really got to get in it.
Yeah.
And it's important we don't get stuck there because while we're suffering, while we're allowing ourselves to burn in it, to really get in it, go through the mountain, be in it, we
Mm.
can become aware that we're observing ourselves in it.
Ooh.
Where we get stuck in the suffering is when we believe we are the humanness experiencing the pain and suffering. But our
Mm.
truth is really that we are the soul observing our human experience, suffering, and experiencing the pain.
Right.
Because when we can connect to our soul, to our highest self, and allow ourselves to go into the pain, this is how we see through the mullahs. Right? This is how we allow ourselves to pull up the pain, to have the human experience. Why the fuck are we here if we're not here to have the human experience?
For
Right? To
sure.
fully fear, love, joy, anger, all the emotions, right?
Mhm.
To fully experience, to let it flow through us, and we don't get stuck there.
Yeah.
Another way of talking about this in Colin Tipping's book, Radical Forgiveness, he talks about a tribe. I don't know where the tribe is. I imagine somewhere in Africa. But the saying goes, in this tribe, when there is something happens to a tribe member, they are given the opportunity 3 times to come to the tribe and play the victim and perpetrator.
Right.
Right? Oh, life's so hard. Did you see how they did this to me and stole my cow and pulled out in front of me in traffic? And right, really get into the story of it. Right? The way I talk about this is pull up the emotions.
Yeah.
And after 3 times, the tribe turns their back.
Right.
Why? Because they're saying we will no longer entertain this. This is not the truth. Bring up the
Right.
energy. Have your human experience. Be in the humanality of it. And let's see through the mullahs. Bring
Right.
up all the energy, and let's not get stuck there.
Right. Yeah, it's appropriate to have a little bit of the poor me when something happens. But then after a while, and like I've had this with friends or even with patients, it's like you're saying the same thing. And God, we've been seeing each other for a year now. Like, have we not done any work that's like helped you like see
And you can
past this?
see how they're concreting their reality, right? The more they tell that story, the
Yeah,
more that's how they see the reality. That's more how they tune themselves, their beacon. The more that's what they attract, right? The more that we solidify this, the more we confirm it.
totally, totally, totally. And so yeah, that makes so much sense that, we can entertain for a moment, give you a chance to vent, let it out, and then after that you need to dust yourself off and like you need to get some work done here and really truly feeling it. And this is where all those dampers that
Yeah,
you talked about in earlier, like the
yeah.
weed, the shopping, the TV, whatever it is, all of those
Food,
things
yeah,
are inhibiting us from fully feeling the severity, the depths,
yeah.
the the
Even if they're
importance.
quote unquote healthy things, right? Even if we meditate to avoid things, that's a harmful thing, right?
Right,
If we're
I call it
using meditation
meditating
to
versus
avoid
meditating.
Yeah, exactly.
Meditating, leave me alone, I've
Right.
gotta get it done.
Right? That if we're doing that, again, it's what's the energy from, right? We
Right,
can exercise can be a healthy thing, right? But if we're using exercise to avoid feeling our emotions, now it's the opposite of a healthy thing.
right. Right. I mean, this is like the restrictive eating, like with the food allergy tests that I mentioned in the beginning. It's like we get so caught up on like I got to do this thing so perfectly and like we're going to control this thing and because our emotions are again non-tangible and they're hard to control because they flow or they're trying to flow but you're putting them in a box on the shelf in the back of your closet mentally and won't allow them to flow because it feels too big, too much. And I even see this with patients' joy, not allowing themselves to fully feel joy. So the opposite emotion of anger is joy. And how many people can sit through life when life is, doing what life does, having a fun time with us, and we're trying to laugh, but it's tough. And we're not allowing ourselves that moment our kid is picking up a dandelion, is like smelling it and like being all cutesy. We're not allowing ourselves to fully relish that moment of this new experience of wonder that this little kid is having because well life is handing it to us right now, you know what I mean?
You mean we're handing it to ourselves right now?
Right, but that's how like it's framed.
Yeah.
It's happening to us. Did you ever take any classes with Steve Dominus, the astrologer in Seattle?
Yes, love him.
So one of the things he said that just like really stuck with me, oh my God, it's Mercury retrograde. It's doing it to me. He says, no, no, it's cosmic sympathy. It's reflecting to us what we are creating, what we have to work on if we allow ourselves to. And I
Yeah.
really love that because again, it takes the blame off of something else and it makes us feel empowered. It says, actually, I have the power.
Exactly.
Do you have the power
Yeah,
or
I
are
was
you
just
giving it
gonna
away
say
to
that.
some fucking planet that you've never been to and hopefully will never go to, right? Like ridiculous.
Exactly.
Oh, Mercury's in
Exactly, right?
retrograde.
We though let me say how do I wanna say this? I'll speak for myself and myself only. In the past, it's been easy for me to want to give my power away.
Mhm.
That there was some sort of, made it some level of okayness. If it's out of my control and life's hard and shit, then, like, it's
Right.
not my fault.
Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, but the reality in my life is, and I welcome listeners to check this out themselves, is that if I take ownership for every single thing in my life,
Everything,
the person
literally.
that T-boned me, the war in wherever, the I'm trying to think of specific things, right? The person that honks at you, the patient that quit, the whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
I welcome you to entertain the idea you created it all.
Right.
Because when we start entertaining that idea, we realize, holy bananas, we actually hold the power,
Right. Right.
right? Whereas, like, let's speak from my own experience. My father is a medical doctor,
Mm. Oh, that's
and we've had
interesting.
these discussions. Yeah. And then I'm so far left field of where I got into natural medicine. I went all the way into soul healing.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
and we've had these discussions, right? Because in his world, and his wife is a retired cardiologist nurse. In their world, they're both brilliant, brilliant
Oh,
human
totally.
beings. In their world, sickness, disease, illness is shit luck of the draw.
Yeah, I'm sure genetics, totally.
Could be genetics, could just be bad luck, right? Like getting older, just bad luck. It
Oh,
just happens to people. They don't
the
put much
getting
thought
old
as to what
thing
causes
kills me, dude. Just part of
it.
aging.
Right? So then what happens when they get sick?
Take a pill, maybe get a surgery, maybe both,
Who
maybe a couple
Where does the
surgeries.
power lie? The
Someone
power
else.
lies somewhere else in
Yeah.
some guessing game, right? So they have no power to heal.
Hmm.
Whereas, right, right, it's a hard pill to swallow to just take the ownership and say, "Oh my gosh, I created all this." Right?
Yeah.
And I reckon the older we get, it's potentially even harder, right? Because we've been down the same pathway,
Right.
right? To say, "Oh dang, like like it's easier to say I was maybe wrong for 2 years for most of us than say, "Oh, I was wrong for 20." Right? It's a
Right.
part of the human condition.
Right. Changing of the paradigms and I mean, yeah, in my own experience, it's like I grew up with a pretty dysfunctional mom and I used to blame, why me? And like that's why I became an atheist, which by the way, I was never more miserable than when I was an atheist. And I was a fucking asshole to everyone, including myself. Um, I blamed everyone around me. Like, why didn't the government? Why didn't foster care? Why didn't my teachers? Why didn't?
And
Why?
how
And
enjoyable was
after
life?
what's that?
How enjoyable was life in
Terrible,
that paradigm?
fucking miserable, absolutely
Horrible.
miserable.
Yeah.
And after a point, I don't know, maybe in my early 20s, because I left home when I was 16, I started to like feel a little bit of softness for my mom. And I understood, okay, well, maybe now what happened to her when she was a kid is why she behaved the way that she did to me. So, like, again, I've taken that like observer perspective, that step back out, which is what yoga tries to teach us. Isn't sweating and power yoga and get into the pose and crunch yourself into a pretzel. It's actually for you to, can you observe yourself, your ego, and put it on the shelf long enough to see what you're doing to yourself, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're moving, and observe it. Be the observer, be the soul observing. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that makes sense actually. And once I started doing
Our
that, I
ego, the
could
monster
see
that wants.
the humanness instead of me feeling like I have to give my power to everyone else and say, hey, maybe I had some lessons to learn there. And like now looking back, if I had had a different childhood, would I be the person I am today? Would I be able to help as many people as I have helped? Would I be fill in the blank with all the things? No, I would not be who I am without those experiences and to have transmuted it to take that, the tapas locus and not feel so hot about it anymore inside of myself and just like yeah, it was the luck of the draw. My soul wanted that experience in this lifetime. It pulled a couple really tough books off the shelf before my soul came to this realm. All right, that's just what I needed in order to become who the human is that I needed to be in this life and transform my soul for maybe the next life or maybe I get to come back a caterpillar, which I think would be much
Yeah.
nicer sometimes than being a human. Being a human is tough. Like to
It's
make these
hard.
observations,
It's
right? Like
hard. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
also to be able to laugh about the fact that it is tough and, like, maybe being a caterpillar, excuse me, could be easier, like, I think that that brings a little bit of humor and softness to the fact that, like, yeah, life is hard and also, like, we gotta laugh about it. We really do.
Yeah.
The best
Yeah.
form of medicine is laughter.
I think that for those of us that have maybe, this is a personal opinion, and I don't know if you share it, but I think for those of us who have spent many lifetimes on other planets, other systems, other places, coming here to the very dense earth feels very painful,
Mm,
hard,
yeah.
slow. I think in my own personal experience and observation, this can lead to things like suicide ideation because It's so much different here on earth than we're used to. And it's
Right.
very slow, dense, and painful. And then there's those who, when you ask them, they say, no, I've spent most of my time here on earth, and earth is normal and more comfortable to them because this is what they're used to.
Mm. Yeah, the slowness I definitely relate to. It does. It just like people, the number one thing people have told me in my life is you need to slow down. You need to slow down. And it's not just about achievements, it's just in general. It's like the way that I think about things, how I orient, how I can pass through 12 scenarios in like the matter of like a few moments. And I'm already at like the best scenario. And it's like, wait, why aren't you where I'm at? Like, why am I slowing down? And now they're calling all these different ways of being like mental health diagnoses and like wanting to put you on a pill and give you this and do that. And again, disempowering us to give away our power to someone else because of this thing that, in my opinion, has made me be as sharp as a tack and be able to move through. And I share that opinion. I'm not entirely sure about the, like the ploidies and like the different like realms of people. Maybe I'm open to like anything being possible. I'm definitely on that page. I think there's been a lot of experiences that I've had, and like that's why some souls have the capacity to transmute. Like I had this patient when I was a student who survived the Rwandan genocide. Holy shite, dude. And she was a successful businesswoman, like crushed life, had a kid, tough kid, behavioral issues, right? But she's fine. I'm fine. But her kid is not fine because he's now expressing what she was unable to because it was so harsh, that experience, right? But how do people, that's Viktor Frankl's, like, we are able to go through the most horrendous things as humans and come out on the other side relatively all right for the most part, not perfect. And yeah, we have things to learn, and maybe our kids will have those experiences,
Right,
but that's
because
okay.
ultimately we're not the human,
No,
right? We can experience hardships and let it bring us back to our truth because we're not just a human. We're not,
no,
right? When we die, it's not over with, right? When we die, there's an essence of us that, they've weighed this. It's something like 2 grams or something.
something like
Uh,
that for
uh,
sure. Yeah,
Something like that that leaves the body that scientists think is the soul,
yeah.
right?
I always give an
And I think,
example to my patients
yeah,
about
go ahead.
plants. How do you know that a plant is dead versus alive? You could have the same exact plant sitting next to each other, and one's living and one's dead. And there's a vibrancy to the plant that's alive, and it's like the other one's dull and crispy. That's that
Yeah, the
essence
vital
of
force,
the vital force, which we also have, which could
Shakti.
be the soul. Exactly, the Shakti, the soul,
Yeah,
the Godhead, whatever we want to call that energetic force that is
all primordial energy. Yeah,
exactly the innate intelligence that moves us. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think we're kind of getting to a time here to wrap up. Any last thoughts on the necessity of suffering?
Um, Lean in.
Yeah.
Those areas of suffering, of fear, of disturbance, lean in. And I know it feels counterintuitive and counter everything you've learned and therefore counter your very being. But I strongly offer to you to lean in
Yeah.
because when I've leaned in and when my clients have leaned in, we get through that hard thing.
Hmm.
And then we make it out on the other side, and then there's a gift. When we don't lean in and we try to avoid, suppress, avoid, ignore, we just leave that thing in us. And so, ironically, we're doing the opposite thing of getting away from it. The
Yeah.
only way we get out of the suffering, get out of the pain, is if we stop running from it
Yeah.
and we lean in.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. We have to allow ourselves the moment maybe to fall apart, which doesn't always feel safe for people. And I know in my experience, like I wasn't fully able to feel the gifts that sadness had to bring me until recently, actually, in my life, because it was not safe to fully fall apart and feel that depth of that emotion, which when I was
Yeah.
in the throes of it, felt like I was never gonna get out, and I was just gonna be sad forever and ever and ever. That's not
Yep.
true, and I think
And
that
then what
that's a
happens
lot.
for your listeners, right? Like this is so important because we avoid it because we think we're going to get stuck in it forever, right? There's still parts of my ego that are like, avoid that scary thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
right? But then what happens when you're able to sit more and more with that sadness? What happened?
Then it became a little bit lighter, a little bit less, dense, to use a word from earlier, and it was like, "Okay, I got to feel this friend," and again, going back to Rumi because he's one of my favorite poets, all of our emotions are our friends. They have something to teach us if we can just offer them some
Yeah.
tea, again, be that observer of what they're trying to teach us. There's actually
Did
I
you say
feel
offer
like
them some tea?
tea, yes, like, give them
Yeah,
some
I love
chai.
that.
Yeah.
I love
Can
that. Say like,
can we
sit down, have some tea
befriend
with
these
me.
hard things,
Yeah.
these perceived hard things? And so that's what I attempted to do, and it wasn't perfect, quote unquote perfect every time, but I feel like the gift that I got from that sadness was actually being able to feel full joy, which feels crazy to say that, like, me feeling my sadness to the pits of the sadness where I thought after weeks of feeling that way, I would never get out. And then one day it just like it's like the sun rose, and I live in a really sunny place, so the sun was always up, but it's just like I saw the sun a little bit differently. The flowers started to bloom and things just started to shift, and I was less miserable. It's like, don't you want to be less miserable? I know I do. I'm on this journey, like, I just had that experience just a few months ago, back in the fall. Like, wasn't that long ago. And you know what? Maybe that's not your place in this life. Maybe that's a gift for your children to gift fully experience what sadness is because there's no shitting on ourselves, right? That's not what we're trying to do in
Yeah.
this lifetime. We all have different capacities. And do we have the capacity to feel the depths of this emotion right now in this moment? Maybe right now is not the time. Maybe in 10 years will be the time, though. Who knows? But if we can
And
approach life with a little
remember,
bit of laughing, maybe some crying here and there, but try to have a little bit of laughter. That's the best medicine. And I think Jerry Seinfeld just gave a a commencement speech. I don't know if you saw any of it, but he's like, "You guys
uh,
take things too seriously, basically, and you care about everything, which is great, and I'm so glad. But also, you guys have forgotten to fucking laugh. It's funny to make jokes about things that are non-politically correct. I'm sorry, it is. And you know what? I don't want to lose my humor because it's not nice. I can make jokes about myself all day, and you know what? I feel like if that's the only type of jokes that we can make, then fine. But I'm gonna laugh when I want to laugh if I think something is funny or it's ironic or you walked into a door frame. Done it.
and hearing you say that reminds me, right? We are all Shakti,
Mhm.
right? Do what it is that brings you joy. Honor your likes and dislikes and follow that because we are all one unit. And you don't have
Yeah,
to be doing a specific thing in order for you to awaken or get some goal, right? Enjoy yourself. Honor your
enjoy.
joy, honor your likes and dislikes. That is what will bring the bliss you're looking for.
Oh, I love that. So we talked about suffering and is it necessary? And I've come to the conclusion that I think Dr. Victoria is correct. No, we don't need to suffer. Is it a vital aspect, though, of the human experience? It seems so. So
It's
many
so
people that
useful.
I've is
Absolutely.
super useful. We have lessons to learn. Are we listening? Are we able to listen with our soul on what those lessons are? Dr. Victoria, how can my listeners find you if they're interested in working with you or just, your musings?
Yeah. My website is visfoundations.com, Visfoundations. Vis is that vital force, visfoundations.com. And you can get started with working with me there. And then you can also find me on Instagram. It is Dr. Torrie, Torrie, Drtorrie is how you can find me on Instagram.
Cool. Great. I will. We're going to wrap this up. And my next guest is also a naturopathic doctor who had a pretty profound awakening. Kind of in the same vein, I wanted to continue this conversation of suffering and grief and loss and the things that hold us back. She realized something when she was a child that has literally been holding her back her entire adult life and had this profound awakening because she was able to finally hear it. And I want people to hear these different types of stories because sometimes the way we orient and hear it from one person is different than when we hear it from another person. And I want this conversation to be heard. It needs to happen. We need to continue to grow as humanity, so that things like these endless wars, I don't know. I don't live in an idealistic world. I live in a realistic world, and also people have discrepancies. I digress. So Dr. Lisa Pomerantz will be my next guest, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you found this to be helpful or interesting or controversial, send it to someone that you can have a conversation with. Hell, if you want to have a conversation with me about it and that you vehemently disagree and like about whatever, I am always open to respectful discourse on a topic. I think that's how we learn and grow and become. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Dr. Shana Powell. Have a great rest of your day.